Commander Janet Wu had spent 6 months training for this moment. 6 months of diplomatic protocol, xenobiology crash courses, and what her instructors cheerfully called sensitivity training. What nobody had mentioned was that the Galactic Council chamber would look like it was built from crystallized soap bubbles and maintained by a committee that had never heard of load-bearing structures. She floated through the entrance, trying not to touch anything. The zero-gravity environment was supposed to be neutral ground for all species. In practice, it meant Janet felt like a bull in the universe's most expensive china shop. "Ah, the human representative arrives," Ambassador Glixner announced, his gelatinous form rippling with what she assumed was amusement. He looked like someone had given sentience to a lime jello mold and taught it condescension. "How delightful. We were just discussing whether your species has progressed sufficiently for observer status." Observer status. Not even full membership. 6 months of prep work to be a cosmic intern. "Thank you, Ambassador," Janet said, keeping her voice level. "Earth is honored to be considered." "Considered being the operative word," chirped Senator Prixella, a bird-like creature with iridescent feathers and the attitude of someone who had never been told no. "We must ensure your kind understands the responsibilities of galactic citizenship. It is quite complex, you understand." Janet understood perfectly. She understood that these aliens thought humanity was adorable. Cute little primates who had barely figured out faster-than-light travel and needed the grown-ups to explain how the galaxy really worked. "I assure you, Senator, humans are quick learners," Janet replied, pushing herself toward the designated human seating area. It looked like a butterfly could break it. "Oh, we do not doubt your enthusiasm," Glixner said, wobbling closer. His voice dripped with the kind of patience usually reserved for toddlers learning to use utensils. "But enthusiasm and capability are quite different things. Your planet's environmental conditions are so, shall we say, mild. We worry about your physical resilience in more demanding situations." Mild. Earth. The planet where everything was either trying to kill you, had already killed someone else, or was waiting for the right moment. The planet where nature spent 4 billion years running the galaxy's most aggressive survival tournament. Janet bit back a laugh. "I appreciate your concern, Ambassador." "Excellent, excellent," Glixner said. "Now, if you would kindly take your seat, we shall begin the preliminary assessment. Do be careful with the furniture. It is quite valuable and calibrated to standard galactic density tolerances." Janet looked at the chair. It was gorgeous, all flowing lines and what appeared to be woven moonlight. It also looked like it would support approximately 30 pounds before catastrophic failure. She settled into it slowly, distributing her weight as carefully as possible. The chair creaked. Every alien in the chamber turned to stare. Glixner's gelatinous body tensed, which she had not realized was possible for something without a skeleton. "Is everything quite all right, Commander?" he asked. "Perfectly fine," Janet said through gritted teeth. The chair was bending. She could feel it bending. Just getting comfortable. "Splendid. Now then, let us proceed with the preliminary evaluation of Earth's petition. First item on the agenda, technological assessment. Representative Kelnorix, your report." A floating crystal being drifted forward, refracting light into rainbow patterns. "Thank you, Ambassador Glixner. Our analysis indicates that human technology is, how shall I phrase this diplomatically, charmingly primitive." Janet's chair made a sound like a dying whisper. She stopped breathing. "Their defensive systems rely on kinetic projectiles," Kelnorix continued. "Kinetic, as in throwing things, with chemical propellants. It is rather like watching children discover that rocks can break windows." The assembled aliens made various sounds of amused sympathy. Janet's grip on the chair arms tightened involuntarily. The material compressed under her fingers like cotton candy. "Furthermore," Kelnorix said, warming to his subject, "their spacecraft lack proper energy shielding. Their medical technology still requires physical intervention, and they have yet to develop molecular phase adjustment. In summary, by galactic standards, humans are approximately 3,000 years behind the minimum threshold for unsupervised membership." 3,000 years. Janet had studied the Council's history. 3,000 years ago, most of these species were still figuring out agriculture. Earth had gone from the first airplane to faster-than-light travel in less than 2 centuries, but sure, they were the slow learners. Thank you, Representative Kelnorix, Glixner said. Most illuminating. Commander Wu, do you have any response? Janet opened her mouth to respond. The chair chose that moment to give up. It didn't break so much as disintegrate, folding in on itself like a dying star. Janet dropped approximately 6 inches before catching herself on the edge of what used to be a seat. The chamber went silent. My apologies, Janet said, still hovering over the wreckage. I may have leaned too hard. Glixner's gelatinous form had gone completely still. That chair was rated for 500 kelprods of force. Is that a lot? It could support a small spacecraft. Janet looked down at the crushed remains. Must have been defective. The emergency furniture replacement team arrived within minutes. They were a species Janet had not encountered before, roughly cylindrical with multiple manipulator appendages, and they treated the broken chair like a crime scene. One of them was taking holographic photographs. Another appeared to be collecting samples. This is unprecedented, one of the technicians whispered, which the translation matrix helpfully rendered in Janet's ear. The structural integrity was perfect yesterday. What could have caused such catastrophic failure? Janet floated nearby, trying to appear sympathetic while internally screaming. She had been in the council chamber for less than 15 minutes and had already destroyed property. This was going great. Perhaps we should proceed with the session while the technicians work, suggested Ambassador Glixner, though he had positioned himself notably farther from Janet than before. Commander Wu, as part of our standard protocol, we traditionally engage in what we call cultural exchange, a simple gesture of goodwill between representatives. Of course, Janet said. What did you have in mind? A traditional greeting, said Ambassador Threx, a mantis-like being with elegant, delicate limbs. In my culture, we clasp forelimbs as a sign of respect and trust. A handshake. They wanted to shake hands. Janet had been warned about this. She had been specifically, explicitly, repeatedly warned about this. I would be honored, Janet said, because declining would be insulting, and she was already on thin ice made of wet tissue paper. She floated toward Threx, extending her hand slowly. His forelimb reached out, thin and graceful as a reed. Their appendages met. Janet gripped as gently as humanly possible, which apparently was not gentle enough. The sound was like a dry twig snapping. Threx's eyes, all 6 of them, went wide. Ah, he said, his voice remarkably calm for someone whose arm was being crushed. Perhaps a lighter touch, Commander. Janet released immediately. I am so sorry. Did I hurt you? Nothing permanent, Threx said, cradling his forelimb. Though I believe I understand now why your species developed protective hand coverings. Your grip strength is quite remarkable. Remarkable, echoed Senator Prixella. That is certainly one word for it. It is not her fault, interjected Representative Kelnorix, floating forward. Clearly the gravitational conditions of her homeworld have resulted in excessive musculature development. Earth's gravity is, let me check, good heavens, 9.8 meters per second squared. The chamber erupted in gasps and what Janet assumed were alien expressions of shock. That is nearly 10 times standard gravity. Kelnorix continued. No wonder she is so dense. Physically, I mean, in terms of mass distribution, not intellectually. Although the correlation between high-gravity worlds and cognitive development is statistically negligible. He was trying to be helpful. Janet appreciated that. She wished he would stop. 10 times, whispered Glixner. She has been operating under 10 times normal gravity her entire life. 9.8 is not that unusual for terrestrial planets, Janet offered. Is standard gravity really that much lower? Standard gravity is 1 meter per second squared, Kelnorix said. We calibrated it based on the median comfortable gravity for 73 council species. Earth is an extreme outlier. Janet did the math. Everything in this chamber was built for 1/10 Earth gravity. No wonder the chair had folded like origami. She probably weighed nearly 1,000 pounds by their standards. Perhaps, she said carefully, we should discuss this matter further before continuing with physical interactions. An excellent suggestion, Glixner agreed with the enthusiasm of someone who had just avoided a catastrophe. Let us take a brief recess, Commander Wu, please do try not to touch anything. Janet watched the council members disperse, giving her a wide berth like she was radioactive. She activated her comm link, and Lieutenant Marcus Webb's face appeared in a small holographic display. "How's it going, Commander?" Marcus asked, grinning. He was back on Earth, in the comfort of normal gravity and furniture that could support human weight. "I broke a chair and nearly shattered an alien's arm," Janet said flatly. "We've been in session for 20 minutes. Marcus's grin widened. "Outstanding. Did you tell them about Earth's gravity yet?" "They figured it out themselves. Apparently we're living on a death world. Wait until they learn about our wildlife. Should I mention the existence of bears or hippos? Maybe start with house cats. Marcus, this is serious. They think I'm dangerous." "Commander, you are dangerous. You're a human in a galaxy built for hamsters. Own it." The hologram flickered as someone bumped into the projector on Janet's end. The entire display shattered into fragments, sparks flying. Marcus's face dissolved into static. Janet stared at the destroyed equipment. She had barely touched it. Behind her, she heard Glixnor's voice, high and stressed. "Did she just destroy a Class 7 holographic projector by tapping it?" "I think she did," Kelnorix responded. "Ambassador, I am beginning to suspect we may have made an error in our assessment of humanity." "What sort of error?" "The sort where we assumed they were harmless." Janet turned around slowly, hands raised in what she hoped was a non-threatening gesture. The assembled council members flinched. "Gentlemen," she said, "I think we need to have a serious conversation about Earth's membership requirements." "Agreed," Glixnor said, "but perhaps we should have it remotely, for safety reasons." The council had relocated to what they called the evaluation facility. Janet called it the galaxy's saddest gymnasium. It was a large, open chamber with various pieces of equipment that looked like they had been designed by someone who had heard the concept of exercise described over a bad phone connection. Chief Science Advisor Kelnorix floated beside her, maintaining a careful distance of approximately 6 feet. "Commander Wu, we have designed a simple physical assessment to better understand human capabilities. This will help us determine appropriate safety protocols for your species' integration into council spaces." "Safety protocols," Janet repeated. "You mean so I don't break anything else?" "Let us say it is for everyone's benefit." Kelnorix gestured toward a door with one of his crystalline projections. "If you would be so kind as to open that door, we can begin." Janet looked at the door. It was elegant, probably expensive, and definitely not built for human use. She approached it carefully and placed her hand on the handle. The handle crumpled like aluminum foil. She pulled gently. The door ripped free from its hinges with a screech of tearing metal. She stood there, holding a door, while Kelnorix made a sound like wind chimes falling downstairs. "That was rated for standard entry and exit loads," he said weakly. "Should I put it back?" "Please do not touch anything else." Janet set the door down carefully. It bent when it hit the floor. In my defense, that handle was very poorly designed. "Noted. Let us proceed to the strength evaluation." Kelnorix led her to a platform with what appeared to be weights. "Please lift the heaviest weight you can manage comfortably. This will give us a baseline measurement." The largest weight looked like a slightly dense pillow. Janet picked it up with 2 fingers. "Is this it?" "That is 50 kelprods, approximately the maximum load a standard species can manage safely." Janet tossed it from hand to hand. It weighed maybe 2 pounds. "Do you have anything heavier?" "That is the heaviest weight in the facility." "Can I try something?" Janet walked over to a nearby equipment rack. It was bolted to the floor and looked reasonably sturdy. She grabbed it and lifted. The entire rack, bolts and all, came up with her. She hoisted it overhead with one hand. Kelnorix was flashing colors she had not seen before. Rapid, strobing patterns that probably meant distress. "Please put that down immediately." Janet set it down. The floor cracked where it landed. "Good heavens," Kelnorix breathed. "You just lifted approximately 8,000 kelprods. That should be physically impossible." "It's really not that heavy," Janet said. "On Earth, I could lift significantly more." "On Earth? Your high-gravity nightmare world." "It's not a nightmare world. It's actually quite nice. We have trees." "Commander Wu, I need you to understand something." Kelnorix floated closer, his voice taking on an urgent tone. The average council species can exert approximately 50 kelprods of force in optimal conditions. You just demonstrated 160 times that capacity casually, with one hand, while standing on a fractured floor. Janet looked down. The floor had indeed developed several concerning cracks radiating from where she had set down the rack. Should I move? Very slowly. And please proceed to the staircase demonstration area. We need to assess your locomotive capabilities. The staircase was a graceful spiral of what looked like frosted glass. Each step was translucent and beautiful, probably worth more than Janet's annual salary. She placed one foot on the bottom step. It cracked. She took another step. That one cracked too. She continued up the stairs, leaving a trail of fractured elegance in her wake. Fascinating, Kelnorix said, though he sounded less fascinated and more horrified. You are literally breaking the testing equipment by walking normally. I'm really trying to be careful, Janet said. I believe you. That is what concerns me. At the top of the stairs, Marcus's hologram flickered to life from a projector built into the wall. Commander, just checking in. How's the evaluation going? I'm destroying everything I touch, Janet said. It's going great. That's my commander. Show them what humanity is made of. Literally, I guess, since you're apparently made of something way denser than they expected. Janet reached out to adjust the hologram's display. Her hand passed through Marcus's projected form and struck the projector behind it. The entire unit exploded in a shower of sparks and melting plastic. Marcus's image distorted, stretched, and vanished with a sound like a digital scream. Did I just kill Marcus? The hologram, Kelnorix corrected. You killed the hologram. Lieutenant Webb is presumably fine on Earth. Right, obviously. Janet looked at the smoking remains of the projector. Should I be worried that I'm finding it harder to remember what breaks and what doesn't? Yes, you should be very worried about that. As am I. A klaxon started blaring. Red lights flooded the facility. Ambassador Glixnor's voice came over a speaker system. Attention all personnel. Emergency council session. Immediate attendance required. The human is to be, I am reading this correctly, contained. Janet and Kelnorix exchanged looks. They want to contain me, Janet said. To be fair, you have destroyed thousands of credits worth of equipment in under an hour. That's not my fault. Everything here is built like it's made of graham crackers. To us, it is sturdy construction. To you, we appear to live in a universe made of spun sugar. Kelnorix's lights dimmed. Commander Wu, I am beginning to understand why your species developed such primitive weapons technology. You did not need energy weapons. You are energy weapons. The council chamber had been hastily reinforced. Janet could see the additional support beams, thicker than before, and what looked like emergency containment fields positioned around her designated area. She floated in the center, acutely aware that every alien in the room was staring at her like she might spontaneously explode. This emergency session is now called to order, Ambassador Glixner announced, his gelatinous form vibrating with what Janet recognized as stress. We must address the human situation before proceeding with any membership considerations. The human situation, Janet repeated. Is that what we're calling it? Commander Wu, please understand our position, Senator Prixella said, her feathers ruffled. In the past 3 hours, you have destroyed 2 chairs, 1 door, a holographic projector, an equipment rack, and 37 stairs. You have injured 1 ambassador and terrified half the maintenance staff. We cannot in good conscience allow unrestricted human access to council facilities. Janet felt her temper rising. She had been patient. She had been diplomatic. She had been careful. And still, they were treating her like a monster. Senator, with all due respect, I have been trying my absolute best not to break things. It's not my fault your entire civilization is built to specs that would embarrass a house of cards. That is precisely the problem, Glixner said. Our infrastructure is built to universal standards. Standards that apparently do not account for species from extreme high-gravity environments. Earth is not extreme, it's normal. For us. Your normal is our apocalyptic disaster scenario. Janet took a deep breath. Getting angry would not help. She needed to make them understand that humans were not the enemy. that Earth wanted to be part of the galactic community, that there had to be a way to make this work. "Look," she said, forcing her voice to remain calm. "I understand this is difficult. I understand we're different from what you're used to. But humanity has so much to offer. We're innovative, we're determined, and we're genuinely excited to learn from you and contribute to the Council. Can't we find a compromise?" The assembled aliens exchanged glances. Several of them seemed to be reconsidering. "Perhaps," Kelnoric said slowly, "there is a path forward. If humans agree to extensive modifications to their physical interaction protocols, and if we implement comprehensive safety barriers, we might be able to accommodate a limited human presence in Council spaces." "Limited," Janet said. "You mean segregated. I mean protected. For everyone involved. That's not membership. That's putting us in a zoo." "Commander Wu, please try to see this from our perspective," Glixner said. "Your species represents an unprecedented physical threat to galactic infrastructure. We must proceed cautiously." Janet felt something inside her snap. She had spent 6 months preparing. She had studied, trained, and done everything right. And these aliens, these fragile, condescending aliens, were going to reject humanity because they were too scared to build stronger tables. "Fine," she said, gesturing emphatically with her hands. "You want us to prove we can be careful? I'll show you careful. I'll show you just how non-threatening humanity can be." She was holding a pen. Standard issue Earth ballpoint, brought from home because the Council's writing implements were apparently made from crystallized air. She had been fiddling with it nervously throughout the session. Now, as she gestured, her fingers loosened. The pen slipped free. In Earth gravity, it would have fallen straight down. In the Council chamber's zero gravity, it drifted. Slowly, peacefully. A tiny cylinder of metal and plastic, tumbling end over end through the empty space. "Oh no," Janet said. The pen completed its lazy rotation. The pointed end aligned perfectly with one of the chamber's primary support columns. Time seemed to slow down. Janet watched, horrified, as the pen made contact. It punctured clean through. The support column was made of some advanced composite material that could withstand meteor impacts and energy weapon fire. The pen, manufactured on Earth for approximately 30 cents, went through it like a needle through butter. There was a moment of absolute silence. Then the column began to buckle. "Everyone evacuate immediately," Kelnoric shouted, his voice losing all its usual calm. "Structural failure imminent. This is not a drill." The chamber erupted into chaos. Aliens scattered in every direction, fleeing through exit portals that were suddenly too small for the panicked crowd. Janet heard the groan of twisting metal, the crack of failing support structures. Air began rushing toward the puncture wound, a whistle that quickly became a roar. "The containment fields!" Glixner screamed. "Activate the emergency containment fields!" "They're not responding," someone yelled back. "The structural damage severed the control lines." The chamber was decompressing, not rapidly enough to be immediately lethal, but fast enough to be very, very bad for anyone who needed to breathe. Janet, having trained extensively for space operations, barely noticed the pressure change. The aliens were not so fortunate. Several of them were already looking distressed. She pushed off toward the breach, moving through the chaos of floating, panicking diplomats. The puncture was approximately the size of, well, a pen. Through it, she could see stars. Around it, the column continued to fracture, cracks spreading like a spider web through the crystalline material. Janet grabbed a decorative wall panel. It was large, ornate, and probably priceless. It was also roughly the right size. She jammed it over the puncture, pressing her full weight against it to seal the breach. The pressure differential fought her, trying to rip the panel away. She pressed harder. The panel cracked. Of course it did. Everything here cracked. Janet looked around desperately. She needed something stronger, something that could actually withstand pressure. Her eyes landed on the equipment rack she had lifted earlier, which had somehow survived the chaos. She kicked off the wall, grabbed the rack, and hauled it across the chamber. Using it as a brace, she wedged it against the panel, creating a crude but effective seal. The whistling stopped. The pressure stabilized. The chamber fell silent except for the labored breathing of terrified aliens and the occasional creak of stressed metal. Janet floated in front of her makeshift repair, holding it in place. Is everyone okay? Define okay, Glixner said weakly. The human just saved us after nearly killing us with a writing implement. To be fair, Janet said, I tried to warn you that I break things. The emergency shelter was crowded, uncomfortable, and filled with the sound of aliens having what Janet recognized as a collective nervous breakdown. She floated near the entrance, trying to take up as little space as possible while also keeping her distance from anything that looked breakable, which was everything. Explain to me again, Ambassador Glixner said, his gelatinous form compressed into an agitated blob. How a writing implement designed for basic record-keeping punctured a support column rated to withstand heavy weapons fire. It's just a pen, Janet said. Standard Earth ballpoint. Plastic body, metal tip. You can buy them in bulk for like 10 credits. 10 credits, Kelnorix repeated, his crystalline structure flickering with what might have been disbelief. You can purchase structural weapons for 10 credits. They're not weapons. They're pens. Commander Wu, that pen destroyed a support column that cost us approximately 4 million credits to manufacture. It penetrated military-grade composite shielding from a standstill while tumbling randomly. Janet's comlink chirped. She activated it, grateful for the distraction. Marcus's face appeared, though the hologram was notably lower resolution than before. Commander, you're trending, Marcus said, barely suppressing a grin. I'm what? Trending, on Earth. Someone leaked footage of the pen incident. The entire planet is losing their minds. There are memes. So many memes. My personal favorite is the one that says, the pen is mightier than the sword, especially in low gravity. Marcus, this is not funny. I nearly got everyone killed. But you didn't. You saved them. After accidentally demonstrating that humanity's office supplies are apparently galactic superweapons. Marcus's expression turned more serious. Commander, you need to see the bigger picture here. You just showed the entire council that Earth doesn't have advanced weapons technology because we don't need it. Everything we have is a weapon in their environment. Glixner was listening, she realized. Several other council members had drifted closer, their attention fixed on Marcus's hologram. Your aide makes an interesting point, Glixner said. We have been operating under the assumption that humanity's primitive weaponry indicated limited capability. We failed to consider that your weapons are primitive because your baseline physical reality is so extreme that you never needed to develop anything more advanced. We use kinetic weapons because throwing things really hard is effective on Earth, Janet said. We use chemical propellants because they work reliably in our gravity. We don't have energy shields because our buildings are already built to withstand forces that would shred anything you consider structurally sound. You conquered a death world with rocks and determination, Senator Prixella said quietly. Good heavens. What else lives on Earth? Kelnorix asked. Besides humans. Janet thought about how to answer that. Well, there are approximately 8.7 million species. Most of them are less dangerous than humans. Most, not all. Some of them are more dangerous, yes. Such as? Janet pulled up her datapad, which had survived the chaos through sheer luck, and started showing them pictures. This is a bear. This is a hippopotamus. This is a great white shark. This is a box jellyfish. This is a mosquito. The mosquito is one of the dangerous ones? Threx asked, his previously injured limb now bandaged in some kind of self-healing wrap. Mosquitoes kill hundreds of thousands of humans every year through disease transmission. And you just, what, coexist with these murder insects? We use bug spray. Bug spray. Chemical deterrents, they're available at any store. Kelnorix's lights were strobing again. You have commercialized chemical weapons against hostile wildlife. We have commercialized everything. That's kind of our thing. Marcus was openly laughing now. Commander, show them the Australia file. We don't need to show them the Australia file. Oh, we absolutely need to show them the Australia file. Janet pulled up the file on Earth's most hostile continent. The assembled aliens watched in growing horror as she scrolled through images of venomous snakes, poisonous spiders, aggressive crocodiles, and one particularly angry cassowary. This entire landmass is inhabited? Glixner asked weakly. By about 25 million humans, yes. It's considered a nice place to live. 25 million humans voluntarily live in that nightmare ecosystem. They have good weather and excellent beaches. Senator Prigzella made a sound like a deflating balloon. We have been approaching this entirely wrong. Humans are not fragile newcomers who need our protection and guidance. Humans are the thing the rest of us would need protection from if they were not so remarkably interested in cooperation. We really are friendly, Janet said. We just want to be part of the galactic community. We want to learn from you, share with you, and work together toward common goals, while accidentally destroying our infrastructure with everyday objects, Glixner said. While learning to adapt to your infrastructure standards, Janet corrected. Yes, there will be an adjustment period. Yes, we'll probably break some more things, but we're worth it. We're innovative, resilient, and we bring unique perspectives. Plus, think about it from a practical standpoint. Would you rather have us as allies or as an unknown variable? The council members exchanged glances. Janet could see calculations happening behind their eyes, whatever those eyes might be. She has a point, Kelnoric said. An alliance with humanity would provide significant strategic advantages. Their physical capabilities alone represent a defensive asset that cannot be easily dismissed. Defensive asset, Janet repeated. Is that what we're calling it now? Would you prefer military powerhouse? I'd prefer partners, but I'll take what I can get. Glixner's form rippled thoughtfully. Very well. I believe we need to reconvene the full council for a new discussion, one that takes into account the actual nature of humanity rather than our previous assumptions. Commander Wu, would you be willing to participate in revised membership negotiations? Absolutely, Janet said, as long as those negotiations involve actual membership and not just observation status. I believe we can arrange something more substantial, Glixner said, though we will need to reinforce the chamber first, and possibly develop new safety standards, and completely revise our understanding of structural engineering. So, a typical Tuesday for humanity, Marcus said from the hologram. 1 week later, Janet returned to the council chamber. It looked different. The walls were thicker, the support columns were reinforced, and everything had a notably more industrial feel than before. The elegant crystalline beauty had been replaced with something that looked like it could survive a hurricane, which, by galactic standards, Janet basically was. Welcome back, Commander Wu, Ambassador Glixner said, his tone significantly more respectful than their first meeting. As you can see, we have made certain modifications to accommodate human participation in council proceedings. I noticed, Janet said, running her hand along a wall. It did not crumple. Progress. This must have been expensive. Approximately 60 million credits, Kelnoric said, floating beside her. However, we calculated that it would be significantly more expensive to exclude humanity from council membership, both financially and strategically. Janet settled into her new chair. It was made from the same material as Earth-based military vehicle armor. It supported her weight without complaint. I appreciate you going to this effort. It was necessary, Senator Prigzella said. We have spent the past week reviewing Earth's petition with a new understanding of your species' capabilities. The Council has reached a decision. I'm listening. Glixner floated to the center of the chamber. The Galactic Council officially extends an invitation to Earth for full membership status with the following provisions. Earth will join the Council as a voting member with all standard rights and privileges. In exchange, humanity will provide defensive support, engineering consultation, and material science expertise to the broader galactic community. Defensive support, Janet said carefully. You want human soldiers. We want human protection, Glixner corrected. There are hostile forces in the galaxy, Commander. Forces that have thus far been deterred only by complex energy weapons and advanced shielding technology. Your species represents an alternative defensive capability that is, frankly, terrifying to contemplate. You want us to be your guard dogs. We want you to be our partners, Senator Prigzella said. Partners who happen to be physically capable of things the rest of us cannot manage. Your strength is an asset, not a curse. We simply failed to recognize it initially. Janet considered the offer. It was better than she had hoped for when she first arrived. Full membership, voting rights, and a role that played to humanity's strengths. Earth would finally have a seat at the galactic table. What about the engineering consultation? She asked. Your construction standards are, by our measurements, military grade, Kelnorix explained. A standard human dwelling could withstand attacks that would destroy most of our defensive installations. We want to learn from your building techniques, and possibly hire human contractors to upgrade critical infrastructure throughout Council space. You want us to rebuild the galaxy to human specifications. Not the entire galaxy, just the important parts. Janet laughed. She could not help it. 6 months ago, humanity had been a joke to these aliens. Primitive, weak, barely worthy of consideration. Now they wanted Earth to redesign their infrastructure and provide military support. The universe had a sense of humor after all. I'll need to consult with Earth's government, she said. But I believe we can work with these terms. We have some additional requests, though, such as technology sharing, educational exchanges, trade agreements that don't disadvantage Earth because of our different resource requirements, and a formal acknowledgement that humans are not uniquely fragile or dangerous. We simply evolved in a different environment that requires mutual adaptation. Reasonable requests, Glixner said. We can draft formal treaty language incorporating these provisions. Shall we say 2 weeks for preliminary documentation? Works for me. Janet reached into her pocket. Every alien in the room tensed. She pulled out a pen, the same model that had punctured the support column. I assume I'll need to sign some paperwork eventually. The chamber went silent. Janet held up the pen, watching the assembled council members track its movement like prey watching a predator. You all realize this is still just a pen, right? She said. That pen is a deadly weapon in the wrong environment, Threx said, his voice shaking slightly. In the wrong environment, everything is a deadly weapon. That's kind of been my point this whole time. Janet set the pen down carefully on her desk. It sat there, innocuous and unthreatening, a tiny cylinder of metal and plastic that had accidentally changed the course of galactic politics. I'll use a holographic stylus for signing documents, she said. No more pen incidents, I promise. We appreciate that, Glixner said, visibly relaxing. Though I must admit there is a certain poetry to humanity's introduction to the Council. You arrived quietly, destroyed our assumptions, nearly demolished our chamber, and then saved everyone while we panicked. It is quite the diplomatic debut. We like to make an impression, Janet said. You have certainly done that. Now then, shall we proceed with the formal treaty negotiations? We have prepared a preliminary draft incorporating the provisions we discussed. A holographic document appeared in the center of the chamber, dozens of pages of legalese in multiple languages. Janet skimmed through it, noting the key points. Full council membership, mutual defense agreements, technology and education exchanges, infrastructure consultation contracts. It was everything Earth had hoped for, and more. This looks acceptable as a starting point, she said, though I'm sure our legal team will want to review the specifics. Naturally. We would not expect you to sign anything without proper review. Glixner paused. Commander Wu, may I ask you something off the record? Of course. Are all humans like you, this capable, this resilient? Janet thought about the question. She thought about the athletes back on Earth who could lift 3 times what she could. She thought about the construction workers who spent their days hauling materials that would be impossible for any council species to move. She thought about the children who played sports and climbed trees and did things that would hospitalize an alien. Ambassador, she said carefully, I'm a fairly average human, maybe slightly above average in strength because of my military training, but I'm not exceptional by Earth standards. The color drained from Glixnor's gelatinous form. You are average. More or less, yes. Then what would an exceptional human be capable of? Well, our Olympic weightlifters can lift over 500 pounds. That's, let me do the math, roughly 225 kilograms. In Earth gravity. Kelnorix made a sound like shattering crystal. That is over 22,000 kelprods. Commander Wu, that is more force than our heavy industrial equipment can generate. And that's just weightlifting. We have athletes who can run faster than your transport vehicles, swimmers who can hold their breath for over 20 minutes, climbers who scale sheer rock faces without equipment. Humans are kind of ridiculous when we push ourselves. This information would have been useful before we built our entire diplomatic relationship around the assumption that you were delicate, Senator Prixella said dryly. You never asked, Janet pointed out. You just assumed. A mistake we will not make again, Glixner said. Very well. Let us proceed with the treaty negotiations with our new understanding of human capabilities. And Commander Wu? Yes, Ambassador? Please do not mention the Olympic athletes to the military subcommittee. I fear they may have a collective breakdown. No promises, Janet said with a smile. The negotiations continued for another 3 hours. By the end, they had outlined the framework for Earth's integration into the Galactic Council. There would be challenges, certainly, cultural misunderstandings, infrastructure incompatibilities, and probably a few more broken chairs along the way. But it was happening. Humanity was joining the galactic community, not as junior members or observers, but as full partners. Janet's comm link chirped again. Marcus's face appeared, grinning widely. Commander, I have news from Earth, he said. The government has approved the treaty framework. They're sending a full diplomatic team to join you within the month. Also, the engineering corps is very excited about the infrastructure contracts. Apparently, the idea of rebuilding alien space stations to human specifications is their new favorite thing. Of course it is, Janet said. Anything else? Just one thing. The President wanted me to pass along a message. She says, and I quote, "Tell Commander Wu that humanity is proud of her, even if she did nearly start an interstellar incident with a pen." Nearly? I absolutely started an interstellar incident with a pen. I just also resolved it. Details, Marcus said. Oh, and one more thing. The media is having a field day with this. Humanity's first contact with the Galactic Council, and we showed up like Godzilla at a dollhouse convention. The approval ratings are through the roof. I'm not sure whether to be proud or concerned. Be both. It's the human way. The hologram flickered off. Janet turned back to the assembled council members, who were watching her with expressions ranging from respect to barely concealed terror. Gentlemen, she said, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful, if occasionally destructive, friendship. Provided you agree to keep your office supplies in a secure container, Glixner said. Deal, Janet said. She reached for the holographic stylus they had provided. Her hand passed through the display, and for a moment, everyone tensed. But nothing broke. Nothing exploded. She carefully positioned her hand and signed her name on the treaty document in glowing light. There, she said, humanity's first official act as a council member, signed without breaking anything. A historic moment, Kelnoric said, though I suspect future historians will spend more time discussing the pen incident than the actual treaty signing. Probably, Janet agreed. But that's okay. Let them remember that humanity joined the Galactic Council not because we were the most advanced or the most elegant, but because we were strong enough to break things and wise enough to help fix them afterward. Poetic, Senator Prigzella said, if slightly terrifying. That's humanity for you, Janet said. We're a walking contradiction. Fragile enough to need spacesuits in the vacuum of space, strong enough to punch holes in your starships, smart enough to invent faster-than-light travel, dumb enough to test it by just launching someone into space and hoping for the best. We're chaos and order, destruction and creation, and we're really, really excited to be here. The council chamber filled with the sounds of what Janet had learned to recognize as alien laughter. It was not quite human laughter, but it was close enough. They understood. Finally, they understood. Welcome to the Galactic Council, Commander Wu, Glixner said. On behalf of all member species, I say this with absolute sincerity. We are honored to have you, and only slightly terrified of what you will break next. I'll try to keep the destruction to a minimum, Janet promised. We would appreciate that. As the council session concluded and the members began to disperse, Janet floated in her reinforced chair, looking out at the stars through the chamber's viewport. Somewhere out there was Earth, spinning through space with its excessive gravity and its deadly wildlife and its wonderfully stubborn humans, who had spent millennia learning to survive on a planet that wanted to kill them. And now those humans were going to the stars, not as conquerors or refugees, but as partners, weird, breakable partners who accidentally weaponized their office supplies, but partners nonetheless. Janet's comlink chirped one more time. She activated it, expecting Marcus again. Instead, it was Admiral Chen from Earth's Space Command. Commander Wu, the Admiral said. "Congratulations on the successful treaty negotiations. Command is very pleased with the outcome." "Thank you, Admiral. It was touch and go for a while, but we got there." "Indeed. Now, I have a question for you. When you mentioned to the Council that you were an average human, were you being diplomatic or honest?" "Honest, sir. I'm not exceptional by Earth standards." "Good, because I'm putting together a team for the formal diplomatic mission, and I want to include some actual exceptional humans. Show the Council what humanity is really capable of when we're not holding back." Janet thought about the Council members' reactions when she had told them she was average. She thought about their horror at the mention of Olympic athletes. She thought about what would happen when they met actual human physical specimens. "Admiral, with all due respect, that might be overkill." "Commander, we just negotiated a defense contract with the Galactic Council. They need to know what they're getting. Besides, I think it's time we stopped apologizing for being strong." "Copy that, sir. Though you might want to send some engineers along too. We're going to need to reinforce a lot of buildings." "Already planned for it. Chen out." The hologram disappeared. Janet sat alone in the chamber, surrounded by reinforced walls and the weight of humanity's future. Somewhere behind her, she heard a creak. One of her chair's support struts was bending slightly under her weight. She shifted her position carefully. The creaking stopped. Even military-grade alien construction had its limits. But that was okay. Humanity would adapt. They always did. They had survived ice ages and plagues and world wars and climate disasters. They had climbed out of the oceans, walked across continents, and eventually reached for the stars. A few fragile alien chairs were not going to stop them now. Janet pulled out her datapad and began composing her report to Earth. She titled it First Contact, a summary of diplomatic relations, infrastructure destruction, and the incident with the pen. It was going to be a hell of a report. Outside the viewport, the stars shone on, indifferent to the chaos of human diplomacy. But somewhere among those stars, civilizations were recalculating their assumptions about the new species that had just joined the Galactic Council. The species that broke chairs by sitting in them, shattered projectors by tapping them, and punctured military-grade support columns with office supplies. The species called humanity, and the galaxy would never be quite the same again.